1. April 2025. Caleb Reed, a newly minted Rhodes Scholar, arrived at our Georgetown estate with a file of documents that blew my world apart. DNA tests, sealed affidavits, a birth certificate, it was all there. Irrefutable proof that he was the true heir to the Hayes family legacy, and that I, for the last 28 years, had been an imposter. But my grandmother, Eleanor, simply acknowledged the truth. She welcomed Caleb into the family home and said nothing more. The other shoe dropped less than 24 hours later. My fiancée, the granddaughter of the Senate Majority Leader, came to call off. I was heading to the library when I heard the voices from inside. Julian Vance, the old senator's eldest son, and his sister, Victoria, Tori, my fiancée. I paused behind the heavy oak door. Eleanor, let's not beat around the bush. Julian's voice was as smooth and cold as polished marble. He set his coffee cup down with a decisive click. Tori and Ethan are no longer a viable match. It's best for everyone if we end the engagement now. My grandmother, her eyes half closed, gave a slow, deliberate hum. The D.C. rumor mill works faster than the speed of light, it seems. She continued, her voice steady. But Caleb's return doesn't change the fact that Ethan is still considered the heir to this family. For now, Julian shot back. But let's be realistic. Ethan isn't a Hayes. His standing will evaporate. It's only a matter of time. Tori is a Vance. Her husband cannot be a man with a questionable background, let alone someone who is, for all intents and purposes, a nobody. He leaned forward, his voice dropping. I think you understand the position we're in, Eleanor. Every word was a shard of ice driving into my chest. A deep, bitter cold spread through me. 2. I am Ethan Hayes. Or I was. Officially, I am the recognized heir of the Hayes family, a legacy cemented by my father, General Marcus Hayes, the current Secretary of Defense, and my grandfather, a legendary senator. My aunt, Catherine, is the First Lady of the United States. With my mother's passing when I was young, and my father constantly stationed overseas or buried in the Pentagon, I was raised in the White House. I grew up alongside my cousin, Christopher, the president's only son. I was the president's favorite, and everyone knew it. He treated me with more warmth than he did some of his own political allies, a fact that bred jealousy among the ambitious young men of D.C.'s other political dynasties. I never cared. As long as Chris was the heir apparent, none of them posed a real threat to me. But while the president showered me with affection, he was relentlessly demanding when it came to my education. A West Point graduate, I pushed myself through every training, every course, with unforgiving discipline. And then there was Tori. She was a close friend and confidant to the president's daughter, Princess. That's what the press called her. Before our engagement, we were merely acquaintances, moving in the same elite circles. The story of how we got together is almost a cliché. She was with her mother on a trip to a ski lodge in Aspen when a sudden blizzard shut everything down. I happened to be there on a weekend leave, and I helped get them a private flight out when a storm broke. After that, we started seeing more of each other. Our families, recognizing the potential of a union between the Hayes and Vance dynasties, encouraged it. Soon, our engagement was announced. The D.C. glossies called us the golden couple. People envied me. Tori Vance was the city's most sought-after woman, beautiful, brilliant, and impeccably connected. More than one senator's son had tried to win her over. 3. Ethan may not be a Hayes by blood. My grandmother's voice cut through my thoughts, but he grew up in the White House. His intellect and his military record are second to none. She was turning the small silver cross on her bracelet, her eyes fixed on Julian. He was unmoved. A diamond with a flaw is still flawed. This was a match of circumstance, not destiny. Their time is over. Eleanor's face was unreadable. After a long moment, she turned her gaze to Tori. And you, Victoria? Do you feel the same? Ethan is not the right fit for me, Tori said, her voice clear and measured. My feelings for him have always been familial, like a brother, nothing more. I leaned against the wall in the hallway, taking deep breaths to quell the storm of anger and betrayal rising in my throat. These past few years, I had been more than happy with the thought of Tori as my wife. The way she smiled, the way she moved, it had all captivated me. Her words left me feeling adrift, lost. The warmth I thought we shared, the future we had planned, was it all just a mirage? It came down to a single, devastating sentence, like a brother. I straightened my tie, composed myself, and walked into the library. I nodded to my grandmother, then to Julian and Tori. I expected to see her usual bright smile, to hear her say, "Ethan, honey." Instead, I was met with a cool, impersonal nod. "Mr. Hayes," she said, her voice laced with a polite distance that felt more insulting than any slur. What was I hoping for? She'd already made her position perfectly clear. I mocked myself internally. "Ethan," Julian began, standing up, "I assume you've gathered the reason for our visit. This is the Hayes family signet ring my mother was given upon your engagement. I'm here to return it." His tone left no room for negotiation. Not that I intended to negotiate. Glancing at Tori's impassive face, I accepted the ring box. I then walked over to the desk, unlocked a small drawer, and retrieved the Vance family heirloom I had been given. "In that case," I said, my voice even, "our engagement is officially over. We will go our separate ways." As Julian took the box from my hand, I saw a flicker of smile in Tori's eyes, a wave of palpable relief. Was she really that eager to be rid of me? What did that make the years we'd spent together? I stood frozen, watching her walk away without a backward glance. "It stings, doesn't it?" my grandmother's voice said from beside me, pulling me from my trance. I just nodded, unable to speak. "I'll give the girl credit," Eleanor said, her tone surprisingly appreciative. "She's more rational than you are, more ruthless. She knows how to weigh the odds. Your mother saw that in her, you know. A survivor. It's a shame. The two of you just weren't meant to be." I remained silent. "Tomorrow, Caleb is going to the White House to meet Catherine," she said suddenly. "Will you be joining them?" The question took me by surprise. I shook my head. "No, I think it's best if I don't. But I heard Chris has been under the weather. Please give him my best." I was trying to keep a low profile, but it was a futile effort. The next afternoon, I was summoned to the White House by my aunt. When I arrived at the private residence, Catherine waved me over. Her smile was as warm as ever, her demeanor unchanged by the scandal. It was Chris, standing beside her, who worried me. His face was pale, with the distinct look of a sickness that had lingered too long. I frowned. It was just a cold, they'd said. Why wasn't he getting better? I walked in and offered my formal greetings to the First Lady and Chris. "Oh, Ethan, none of that formality. Come here," Catherine said gently, pulling me into a hug. She then smiled at Caleb. "Caleb is a scholar, and you're a soldier, a man of words and a man of action. The two of you will be incredible assets to Chris in the future. My son is a lucky man." "Chris is a natural leader," Caleb replied smoothly. "It's an honor to be able to support him." His words were well chosen. I saw my aunt's smile widen with approval. "Chris, that flu has been with you for weeks," I said, turning to my cousin. "Why isn't it getting better?" A flash of irritation and helplessness crossed his face. "Dad has already had 3 different specialists from Walter Reed look at me. None of them can figure it out. Ever since Dr. Evans retired, the White House medical unit has been slipping." Catherine frowned. "Dr. Evans was one of a kind. It's true the others don't quite measure up." "Maybe," I said, an uneasy thought forming in my mind. "But even so, they shouldn't be stumped by a simple flu, should they?" Chris's eyes narrowed in thought. Seeing that I planted the seed, I said no more. A little later, the president joined us for dinner. Though he acted as if nothing had changed, I could feel a subtle shift in the air, a new distance between us. On the way home, my grandmother said to me, "Ethan, the Hayes name used to be your greatest asset. Now it's a gilded cage. But with that cage unlocked, how high you fly is entirely up to you." I understood. With my father as Secretary of Defense and my maternal grandfather a powerful political broker, my cousin Chris's path was clear. But the president, as much as he trusted my father, was always wary of concentrating too much power in one family. It's why he had pushed me so hard academically and professionally, only to sideline me once I started to build my own reputation. I had asked for a combat command several times, arguing that theory was no substitute for experience, but he had always refused. Today, for the first time, I sensed that might be about to change. The next day, an official announcement came from the Pentagon. It concerned both me and Caleb. Julian Vance had been right. My status, as the Hayes heir, was gone, revoked in a single press release. But the same announcement gave me something else, a promotion to lieutenant colonel in command of a special operations unit. I was being deployed south after the new year. Caleb, in turn, was named the new heir to the Hayes legacy and appointed to a prestigious fellowship at the Brookings Institution. I watched the smile on Caleb's face as he read the news, and I didn't know whether to congratulate him or pity him. He didn't see the game yet. My father was a 4-star general, the Secretary of Defense. My grandfather was a kingmaker. The president, even with his complete trust, would never allow one family to hold that much military and political power. Why do so many great political dynasties fade? Is it because they lose their edge? Or is it because, in Washington, you can be a king or a kingmaker, but you can't be both? It's the eternal balancing act of power. 5. The news was out. I was no longer a Hayes, and Tory Vance had broken our engagement. The gossip columns were having a field day. Suddenly, I was an object of pity for some, and a target of ridicule for others. Like the man standing in front of me now. Well, if it isn't the heir to the Hayes dynasty, Trent Donovan sneered. Dressed in a ridiculously expensive suit, he was the notoriously arrogant son of another powerful D.C. family. "Oh, that's right, I forgot," he said with mock surprise. "That's old news. The new heir is Caleb Reed, the Rhodes Scholar, isn't he? You've got some nerve, Hayes, or whatever your name is. A fraud, living high on someone else's legacy. Shameless." There was a bitter, envious edge to his voice. I looked at him, my fists clenching inside my pockets, but I refused to give him the satisfaction of a reaction. I didn't have the political capital to burn on a public spat. Even if the Hayes family and the president wouldn't let me fall, I couldn't risk the fight. "What's the matter? Keck out your tongue." Trent pressed, stepping closer. I bit back my anger and turned to leave, but his friends moved to block my path. "I heard Tory Vance dumped you." "Congratulations," he said with a vicious grin. "By the way, you know the First Lady's Foundation is hosting its annual gala this weekend, right? Tori will be there." He pulled out an embossed invitation, waving it in my face. "I'm guessing your invitation got lost in the mail. But listen, if you get on your knees and bark like a dog for me, I might consider taking you as my guest. How about it?" I glanced at the invitation in his hand and let out a cold laugh. "Thanks for the offer, Trent, but I don't need it. My Aunt Catherine sent mine over weeks ago." I put extra emphasis on Aunt Catherine, a pointed reminder that even without the Hayes name, I was still family to the woman in the East Wing. Growing up in the White House, I learned a thing or two about leverage. To have power and not use it? That's not noble, it's foolish. As for Tory, yes, it hurt. But I'm not some lovelorn character in a romance novel, willing to throw everything away for a lost cause. Watching the color drain from Trent's face was immensely satisfying. With a short, sharp laugh, I shouldered past him. I was on my way to see the new townhouse the government had arranged for me. It was ready faster than I'd expected. It was a 3-story brownstone, modest by the standards of Georgetown's grand estates. But the interior was impeccable, furnished with an understated but undeniable quality. The man from the General Services Administration who showed me around made a point of mentioning it. "The president himself took an interest in the renovations," he said, his tone implying a great deal more. "The First Lady and Chris also sent over a number of pieces." I smiled. I knew exactly what he was telling me. "Please pass on my thanks. Their attention to detail is remarkable." I walked through the townhouse, each room perfectly suited to my tastes. It was a clear signal. I was still under their protection. 6. The First Lady's Foundation Gala was held at a sprawling private estate in Virginia's Hunt Country. The main attraction wasn't the formal dinner, but the exclusive after-party, with its open bars and heated terraces overlooking the frosty, moonlit gardens. It was the perfect winter escape for D.C.'s elite. I found a quiet corner with a few old friends from West Point. I could feel them walking on eggshells around me, and the warmth of their concern was a welcome comfort. "You guys can relax. I'm fine, really," I said, finally breaking the awkward silence. "Thank God," said Dave Miller, whose father was a well-respected congressman. "We were worried you were going to go off the deep end." I gave him a wry look. "Do you really think I'm that fragile?" With the ice broken, the conversation flowed more freely. "Hey, Ethan, have you heard how Caleb's doing at Brookings?" asked Matt Shunn, whose family had deep roots in the State Department. Matt was a brilliant analyst, fresh out of Georgetown School of Foreign Service and now working at a top think tank. I shook my head, genuinely curious. He's the Hayes heir, so nobody's giving him a hard time, but that's about it, Matt said. The sharks in that tank are a subtle bunch. Most of them are just ignoring him. He's out of his element. I wasn't surprised. There's a clear line between the political world and the military world, even if our families intermarry. With my father leading the Pentagon, they're always going to be wary of Caleb. I just wonder if he's figured that out yet. Matt shook his head. Doesn't look like it. He's got a steep learning curve. Before he could finish, a collective gasp rippled through the party. I looked toward the main terrace, where a large, ornate fountain was the centerpiece. A woman in a pale pink dress was flailing in the water. The dress looked familiar. Someone fell in, Dave said, a note of concern in his voice. In this cold, that's dangerous. It took a few frantic moments for security to pull her out. As the crowd began to disperse, the whispering started. We were close enough to overhear a nearby conversation. That railing broke at the most convenient time, didn't it? Right when Tory Vance was leaning against it. Totally, a second voice replied, dripping with sarcasm. I saw the broken section. It was a clean break. Almost looked like it was sawed through. And Senator Richardson was the one who pulled her out, wasn't he? He was trying to get the Vance endorsement for months, but they turned him down. Now, look at them, a perfect little drama for the cameras, the first woman chuckled. You should have seen the look on her face, though. She was pretending to be grateful, but she looked like she could kill someone. It was priceless. This is why I'm glad I'm a political nobody, a third woman chimed in with a shiver. This town is terrifying. Matt looked at me. To pull a stunt like this at the First Lady's event, that's a bold move. Dave snorted. Bold or not, the result is the same. Now Senator Richardson has his in with the Vance. He'll probably end up marrying her. I had to suppress a cold laugh. This had the fingerprints of D.C.'s power players all over it, with the ambitious Senator Richardson conveniently positioned to be the hero. He was just one of several rivals who had been circling, hoping to ally with the Vance family. Anyone who wanted a shot at the presidency knew they needed that kind of backing. But a small, cynical part of me suspected something else. The so-called rivals might have been the hunters, but what if the prey was the one setting the trap? As Tory's former fiancée, I had made it my business to know everything about her. And Tory Vance would never, ever go near a pool or fountain. She'd had a near-drowning experience as a child and was terrified of open water. So, was this a case of the brilliant predator disguising herself as the victim? The Vance family, they played a long game. 7. A few weeks later, the official announcement came. The president had given his blessing to the marriage of Senator Miles Richardson and Victoria Vance. Worried about the political implications, I went to the White House to see Chris. I found him in his private study, calmly playing a game of chess against himself. When he saw me, he smiled, a genuine, relaxed expression. You're here. Good. Come, play a game with me. I sat down opposite him, studying his face. He was doing his best to hide it, but the unhealthy pallor was still there. A knot of unease tightened in my stomach. Richardson and the other rivals have been making a lot of noise lately. It couldn't be a coincidence. You seem to be in a good mood, considering the circumstances, I said. Chris smiled knowingly. I know why you're here, Ethan. Don't worry. They're just grasshoppers in autumn. They won't be jumping for much longer. I nodded slowly. I was there to warn him, but if he already had a plan, that was all that mattered. Dad approved your deployment. Be careful out there. A real war zone isn't a training exercise. He placed a black knight on the board with a soft click. Don't worry, I replied. I value my life. I don't take foolish risks. I know you don't, Chris said, looking up at me. I'm counting on you to come back. His expression was complicated, filled with a meaning I couldn't quite decipher. Tory and Senator Richardson's wedding was fast-tracked. When the invitation arrived at my townhouse, I stared at it for a long time. As much as I told myself I was over it, a part of me was still angry, still clinging to a sense of wounded pride. I decided to go. I needed to see it, to face it, to finally cut the cord and move on. I watched as Richardson led Tory through the grand ballroom of the Hay Adams, where they exchanged vows and were presented to a room full of D.C.'s most powerful figures. She was a senator's wife now. Tory was smiling, and in that smile, I saw a raw, triumphant ambition. She was clearer-eyed than I had ever been. She always knew exactly what she wanted. I stood there and methodically carved her out of my heart, determined not to leave a single trace. By the time Senator Richardson found me, his eyes gleaming with smug victory, I felt nothing. "I guess she ended up with me after all," he whispered, leaning close to my ear. "You lose, Hayes." I looked at his triumphant face and felt a strange flicker of pity for him. Tori didn't love him. She loved the power he could give her. Senator Richardson wasn't her partner. He was a stepping stone. I remembered something Tori once told me, a fierce light in her eyes. "Anything a man can do, I can do better." Back then, I had asked her, "When I'm deployed, can you manage things at home?" Her answer had surprised me, revealing a side of her I'd never seen. She wasn't just a political heiress. She had been a competitive equestrian, a champion marksman. She was tougher and more disciplined than almost anyone I knew. It was that shared drive, that intensity, that had drawn us together and led to our engagement. But none of that mattered anymore. 8. The next day, I was on a plane heading south to my father's command center. The region had become a hotbed of instability, with local insurgencies flaring up constantly. When I walked into his office, he looked up from a stack of intel reports. "What are you doing here? Did the president send you? Is something wrong with Chris?" He asked immediately, his questions sharp and urgent. I was taken aback. "Chris hasn't been well," I admitted, and proceeded to tell him about the lingering flu that no doctor could seem to cure. My father's brow furrowed as he listened. "You're here now," he said when I finished. "Stick with me. You have a lot to learn." In the weeks that followed, he became my personal mentor, drilling me on everything from strategic planning to supply chain logistics. At times, I found his dedication to me strange. I had grown up in the White House, seeing him only on rare occasions. We should have been near strangers, yet there was an effortless bond between us, a deep and unspoken understanding. Even after discovering I wasn't his biological son, nothing had changed between us. If anything, he seemed more determined than ever to prepare me. I couldn't make sense of it. Life on the front lines was relentlessly demanding. I led patrols, engaged in small-scale skirmishes, and slowly earned the respect of the men under my command. Then the call came. The Bayad tribe, a local group that had always been friendly to U.S. forces, was under attack and asking for aid. I sent a dispatch to my father and led a small rapid response team to assess the situation. I never should have gone. It was a trap. Worse, the betrayal came from within our own ranks. As chaos erupted, a cold realization hit me. The target was me. I was just thankful that I was the one who walked into the ambush and not my father. We were cut off, hunted through the harsh, unforgiving desert mountains. We evaded capture for days, but our pursuers were relentless. They finally cornered us in a narrow canyon. Just when it seemed hopeless, my father's forces appeared, descending on the canyon like a mirage come to life. In the heat of the firefight, he pushed his way to my side. "Ethan, you have to get out of here. We'll cover you," he yelled over the gunfire, shoving a small, heavy pouch into my hand. I didn't argue. Wounded and exhausted, I would only be a liability. I led the survivors back to our base. Once inside, I opened the pouch. It contained a single, heavy challenge coin made of platinum. I had seen one like it before. Chris carried one just like it, but his was engraved with the presidential seal. This one was engraved with the Hayes family crest and the single initial. Chris once told me the president had them specially minted for him when he was born. So what was this? My decision to retreat had been the right one. My father and the rest of his troops returned the next day, his face like a thundercloud. The losses had been significant. I never got the full story, only that the regional governor was swiftly replaced and the Bayad tribe paid a heavy price for their treachery. After that, my father's training became even more intense, more unforgiving. 9. Then, the news from Washington hit us like a thunderbolt. Christopher Thompson, the president's son, was dead. The world went white. I stood there, clutching the official dispatch ordering me back to D.C., my mind a complete blank. "How?" "Ethan, pack your things. You're leaving for D.C. immediately." My father's voice, weary and strained, cut through the fog. I looked up at him. His expression was grim, but not surprised. That night, he came to my quarters and handed me a small, unassuming hard drive. "This is the command authority for the Southern Command's Autonomous Operations Unit." I stared at him, completely bewildered. "I'm assigning 300 of them to your personal detail for your return to Washington. This drive gives you full operational control. Do whatever you need to do, he ordered. I don't, he cut me off. These 300 men are all military orphans, raised and trained in a Black Ops program. No official records. Besides me, the only person who knows they exist is the president. His eyes were deadly serious. So you don't have to worry about oversight. They're yours now. Is that clear? I nodded numbly. Father, does the president think someone will try to make a move now that Chris is gone? I asked. Even with this unit, how can the D.C. National Guard alone is over 10,000 strong, not to mention the Secret Service. He managed a faint smile. Just get back to Washington. You'll understand when you get there. 10. Under my father's orders, I began the journey back to D.C. in a state of confusion. Just outside the city, at a private airfield, I was met by another vehicle. Inside was Frank Russo, the former head of Chris's Secret Service detail. He handed me a briefcase. Inside were the command codes for the D.C. National Guard's Northern Command. Historically, that command had been under the authority of the Hayes family. For the last decade, it had been run by Congressman Miller, Dave's father. The president's orders are for you to hold your position here at the airfield and await his signal, Russo said. With him were 300 men from the Presidential Protection Division, all fiercely loyal to Chris. I didn't know what was happening in the city, but it was clear that some kind of coup was in motion. On the third night of our vigil, the distant sound of automatic gunfire echoed from the direction of the White House. Moments later, my encrypted phone buzzed. It was the signal from the president. Time to move. I went straight to the Northern Command's headquarters. The Hayes name still carried weight there, and with the president's command codes, I met no resistance. I took command of the Northern Garrison, Russo's Secret Service unit, and my own Special Ops team from Southern Command. We seized control of the northern half of the city and then moved on the White House itself. I heard the shouting from the Oval Office before I even entered. You want to know why? Ha ha ha. It was the hysterical laughter of Senator Miles Richardson, laced with pure hatred. Did you ever once treat me like a rival, let alone a colleague? In your eyes, there was only one person who mattered. Chris. You self-serving traitor, the president's voice boomed. I should have destroyed you when I had the chance. And I should thank you for your restraint, for letting me live in your perfect son's shadow all these years. Richardson spat back. Do you know why he never recovered from that flu, Mr. President? Because the great Dr. Evans retired straight into my pocket. Chris's immune system was shot to hell long before he got sick. And it wasn't the flu that killed him, was it, Senator Morrison? Hearing Chris's name used like that, I felt a surge of white-hot rage. My fists clenched, my knuckles turning white. Ah, you always were a sharp one, Miles, Senator Morrison, another rival, chuckled. Why don't you take a guess? Of all the food and drinks served here tonight, how many items aren't poisoned? Panic erupted in the room. I could hear people gasping, some beginning to vomit violently. But through the chaos, I could also tell that many were unaffected. Morrison's face must have fallen. A third voice, smooth and amused, cut through the noise. Did you really think you could win the game with such a clumsy move, Morrison? It was Senator Davies. You always did lack finesse. Morrison's voice turned venomous. I should have known you were a poison expert, Davies. You always were a snake. He then turned his venom on the president. You failed, old man. You failed as a president, and Chris failed as a leader. Davies here was supposedly his most loyal ally, yet he stood by and did nothing while Chris was being poisoned. He was too busy gathering his own supporters. Half the people in this room are his. On cue, Davies clapped his hands. The Secret Service agents in the room suddenly turned, their weapons raised, surrounding the unpoisoned guests. The head of the detail stood by Davies' side. Davies smiled at Richardson. Looks like your gambit failed, Miles. He then produced a blank, signed executive order and placed it on the Resolute desk. Mr. President, no need to wait for help. The White House is on complete lockdown. My sons, the president said, his voice laced with a cold, chilling irony as he surveyed the traitors. All of them, my brilliant sons. His calm was more terrifying than any rage. What about you, Senator Thorne? The president asked, turning to a quiet figure in the corner. Nothing to add to the evening's entertainment? In a flash, the Secret Service chief who had been standing with Davies suddenly pivoted, pinning Davies' arms behind his back and holding a pistol to his head. He shoved the senator over to Thorne's side of the room. 11. A slow, deliberate clap echoed through the stunned silence. "What a performance," the president said, his voice dangerously soft. "Truly spectacular." He seemed to be in complete control. "Ethan," the president's voice rang out. "Are you going to wait for a written invitation?" I stepped into the Oval Office. The room fell silent, every eye fixed on me in disbelief. "Ethan? Impossible," Richardson stammered, his face ashen. "You were supposed to be dead. The intel said you were killed in an ambush." I looked at him, and everything clicked into place. "So the traitor in my father's command was your man. The report I sent to your governor must have been very convincing." Richardson's face contorted in fury. "General Hayes falsified a report to the Pentagon. The official story was that my special ops unit was escorting my body home." "Gentlemen, you can stop scheming now," I announced, my voice carrying over the shocked whispers. "The D.C. National Guard's Northern Command has the White House surrounded. They also control all major access points to the city." I paused, letting the weight of my words sink in. "And, Senator Richardson, as for the reinforcements you were expecting from the East, they're not coming. Russo, bring in our guest," I ordered. The doors opened again, and two of my men escorted in the last person I expected to see. It was Tori, my ex-fiancée, Senator Richardson's wife. "Ethan, you're alive?" she gasped, her face a mask of hatred. I was momentarily stunned by the raw venom in her eyes. "It seems my survival is a great disappointment to you," I replied coolly. The pieces were finally coming together. The intel Chris had been gathering before he died, which Russo had given me, exposed it all. Tori's mother was the illegitimate daughter of a rival political dynasty, the Anson family. Her marriage to Richardson was never about love or power. It was about revenge. "Huh. So what if you win, Mr. President?" Richardson sneered, his eyes wild. "You still lose. Chris is dead. You'll still have to choose one of us to be your successor." The president looked at him with an expression of profound pity. "Whoever told you I only had one son?" A collective, audible gasp filled the room. Even I stared at him, my heart pounding in my chest. A bombshell had just dropped on Washington. 12. "No, that's impossible," Morrison whispered. "After Davies' mother was born, the First Lady was poisoned. She couldn't have any more children." The president's voice was quiet, filled with a deep, resonant sorrow. "That's true. But who said my other son had to be younger than him?" Morrison's face went slack with shock. The president turned to me. "You had questions when you came back to D.C., didn't you?" I nodded, still trying to process his words. He walked over to me and gently took the challenge coin from my pocket. "Chris had one just like this. I had them made myself." He held it up for the room to see. The silence was absolute. Every eye was on me. "The Queen, as you called her," he began, using the old affectionate nickname for the First Lady, "gave birth to twins." He paused, his gaze sweeping over the traitors. In the old world, in some royal courts, twins were considered a bad omen, a sign of a fractured succession. One of them always had to be removed. He looked directly at me. It was a superstition, but in our world, perception is reality. A rumor of instability could have torn the administration apart. "But you were my son, Catherine's son. We couldn't let you die. So I asked Marcus Hayes to come to the White House that night. He took you from the hospital, and we announced that the First Lady had given birth to one healthy baby boy." It all made sense. My father's unwavering loyalty, my grandmother's composure, my Aunt Catherine's endless affection. Chris, they had all known. My strange, complicated feelings on the flight home before my deployment now seemed like a premonition. "Why me?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. Why was I the one who was sent away? The president sighed, a lifetime of regret in that single breath. Chris was poisoned in the womb. He was born frail, weak. He spent his entire life fighting to stay healthy, living on a regimen of medications and treatments. Poisoned? But I was fine. He shook his head. You were lucky. Marcus's wife, Sarah, gave birth the same day as Catherine. To twins, a boy and a girl. But the boy was stillborn. So Marcus and Sarah raised you as their own. It was the perfect cover. You looked so much like Catherine's brother. No one ever suspected you weren't General Hayes' son. Stillborn, then Caleb. Caleb Reed is a good man, but he is no relation. He's a distant cousin of the Hayes family, someone Marcus was planning to mentor. The story of him being the true heir was a fiction we created. I finally understood. You leaked the story to draw them out. The president nodded. Chris's health was failing. We knew it was only a matter of time before you had to take your place. But I knew my rivals were circling, waiting for an opportunity to strike. So I sent you away to the most dangerous place I could, to keep you safe while we set the trap. The 300 soldiers my father gave me. They weren't a security detail. They were a Praetorian guard in waiting. The president's gaze then fell on Senator Vance, Tory's grandfather, who had remained silent throughout the entire ordeal. We were colleagues for 30 years, John. I never thought you would betray me. I brought your granddaughter into the White House. I arranged her match with Ethan. She would have been the wife of the next president. It's a shame. A bitter, mocking laugh escaped Tory's lips. You call it shame, Mr. President? I call it a blessing. She looked at me, her eyes burning with a cold fire. When things started happening to me, things that were too convenient, too perfect, I knew something was wrong. I used every resource the Vance family has, and I couldn't find the source. There was only one person with that kind of power. The president. When I realized he was maneuvering me, pushing me toward you, I played along. She continued, her voice dripping with contempt. But I was never your pawn. Do you have any idea what it feels like to know your life is being manipulated by someone else? I regret nothing. Epilogue: with the coup dismantled and the traitors arrested, everything changed. A presidential decree was issued. I was officially recognized. My name changed to Ethan Thompson, and through a series of swift political maneuvers, I was confirmed as the new vice president. The attempted coup had gutted the administration, leaving dozens of high-level positions vacant. My father, the president, established a special commission to find and vet new talent, and he put me in charge of it. He began to mentor me personally, teaching me the intricate dance of domestic and foreign policy, slowly and deliberately handing over the reins of power. He also arranged a marriage for me to a woman named Anne-Marie Durand, the daughter of the new Secretary of State. She was the woman from the gala who had shuddered and said, "This town is terrifying." In 2028, with my mother, Catherine's health declining, my father officially stepped back, delegating most of his duties to me. 3 months later, he resigned, allowing me to ascend to the presidency so he could spend his remaining time with her. In 2029, the first year of my presidency, my first son was born. We named him Christopher. He spent most of his days in the loving care of his grandparents.